Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video I'd like to talk to you about two key concepts that lie at the heart of management and entrepreneurship. These two key concepts are the business model and the business plan concept. Both concepts are very important to understand, as I will be explaining in a second. But what's perhaps even more important is that sadly so, both concepts are oftentimes confused with each other because the names are so alike. On the one side, this is understandable, not just because of the name, but also because both concepts are interrelated. But on the other side, both concepts are also quite different from each other. Because of that, in this video, I'd like to talk to you about what a business model is and what makes for a good business model. And on the other side, I'd like to talk to you about how the business model is related to the business plan and how it's of course also different from the business plan. And so eventually, how both concepts can be brought in harmony with each other. So without any further ado, let's jump into the topic and let's first of all start talking about what the business model is. So a business model is about what you offer to the consumer. And in offering something to the consumer, a product or a service, of course you have to figure out how you're going to earn money to cover the costs that will come up the moment that you're actually trying to supply and produce, of course, before that, something to the consumer. So a couple of important questions are out there that you actually need to answer for yourself before you can actually understand well whether your business model is going to pass the market test and whether with that business model your business will be able to accrue competitive advantages compared to other companies and whether your company is actually viable out there, whether it will actually be successful once starting to operate for real. So what are these questions? Let's talk about them one by one. The first question is actually essential and lies at the heart of your business model, which is what consumer need are you trying to address through your business and with that, of course, through your business model. So what type of a product or service or whatever you have in your mind, how is it actually going to fill a gap out there? How is it actually going to fulfill a need that the consumer has and that's currently not yet addressed, and this is going to still a hunger that currently is still out there? And this is very critical, right? If you have a product or service out there that people are not looking for, that they're not interested in, then it can be as nice as it is, and it can be as good as it is, it can be as solid as it is, but it won't sell because it is not a need. People are not looking for it. People don't want it, right? So everything starts with what need are you trying to address? And only then we get to the second question is, with what are you actually going to address this need? So there's a need. People are looking for something. People want something to be easier or better. But in what way are you actually going to address this need? Through what product or through what service? And of course, then we're getting to a lot of delicate issues like design, right? How should it look like? How should it taste? How should it feel, right? So not only what product or service, but also how does it work? How comfortable is it? How appealing is it to the eye? And so on. Everything that comes with designing a product or service is critical at this stage. It's not only the need, but also exactly what type of a product and what type of a service in terms of ease of use and in terms of how it appeals and how it is perceived. The third point that comes after the product and service identification that will again address the need at hand is, of course, how actually are you going to address the consumer need? So how are you going to sell your product or how are you going to sell your service, right? And this basically boils down to sales channels. Are you going to sell your product in a physical store? This has pros and this has cons to it. You need to have a store basically, right? And that store, of course, there need to be people in it. You need to have inventory that's going to be in the store and so on. Or are you going to sell online? And if you sell online, at least you don't need the physical store. You don't have to pay the rent for that. But now you need to have a website with the appropriate infrastructure and the know-how. Or are you going to combine both sales strategies? Are you going to have both physical and online sales? And so are you going to pursue an omni sales channel? All of them is possible, but all of them have their pros and their cons. Taking this further to the fourth question that you need to ask yourself is, what resources are you going to use for addressing the need that you've identified? So yes, sales channels, yes, products and services, and yes, you have a need identified, but you need resources to make everything work, which basically means that you need people, right? You need money, you need infrastructure, you need buildings, you need all sorts of things. And then of course you need to have activities, which is point 5, which are actually going to be put to use to make these resources actually address and fulfill these previous points mentioned. So you need to have financing activities, you need to have marketing activities, operational activities, all sorts of activities that are going to come all together in an integrated fashion in putting your resources to use to sell your product and service that you thought would actually identify, that would actually address the identified consumer need. The 6th point that you have to ask yourself and that you have to put a check behind is, can you do everything by yourself? Oftentimes this is not the case, especially if you're a new company and especially if you don't have that many resources. And if you cannot do everything by yourself, then what's going to be critical here are the right partners and the right suppliers. And of course also your way of working with them. To what extent is this going to be a contractual relationship? To what extent is it going to be based on trust? To what extent do you want this cooperation to be integrative, right? To what extent do you want to close cooperation? And to what extent do you want to be in a distant fashion, that they're just going to deliver their services and that's it, and that you're going to take it from there? All of these are very important decisions to make, and all of this is of course going to boil down to the type of relation that you're going to have with these suppliers and with these partners. A good supplier and a good partner is a critical asset that really can make the difference, but the bad partner and the bad supplier is exactly the opposite. And because of that, this point really deserves good attention. The next point in line is a very critical point that actually a big part of the business model is about, which is, what is your income model? And of course this is to some extent also linked to what your goals, what your aspirations are with your business and with your business model. First of all, are you a for-profit business or not? And if you're a non-profit business, then of course you'll have a different income model. If you're a for-profit business, you need to cover your costs, but with that you of course also need to have an extra premium that's going to feed into your investments, and at the same time of course that's going to help you grow, but it's also going to be a strong signal to those who have invested in you. If you're a non-profit business, then the only thing you have to do, ideally so, is covering your costs and be break even. In getting income, of course the income model is key, and important here is that you realize there are different income models. You can have a freemium model where people can use your product and service to a certain extent, but if they really want to get the full potential and full possibilities of your product and service, they will need to start paying, which is called freemium, right? Which is the combination of free and premium, and especially for the premium features, which is oftentimes something to the technology era, then people need to start paying. And we often see this, for example, in the case of games, in the case of applications, where people get free access up to a certain point. They get the taste, they get the interest, they get the feel, and then they start to pay if they really like the product or the service. You can think of a subscription model where people are actually paying monthly fees or yearly fees in exchange for being able to fully use the product or service that you're supplying to them. You can think of Netflix, where you can monthly pay a fee and then can unlimitedly access all of the movies and series and documentaries on there. You can think of a commission service, commission-based income model. Think about Uber, for example. You want to make use of Uber, then there's the driver who takes you from A to B, and then for each transaction Uber gets a part on top of it, which is the commission that Uber, for example, accrues. You can think of an advertisement-based income model where people are actually able to use your products and services for free, and that you're actually only going to get money from the advertisements on and around your products and services. Different income models suitable for different types of products and services, again suitable for different types of companies, goals and aspirations. In the end, these incomes of course also have to be matched by the costs that you have, or the other way around. Your costs that you're going to make have to be matched by the income that you're going to have. And so your income model is going to determine how frequent you're going to get money and how much money you're going to have, and how much of it is going to not come in because perhaps your income model does not match your consumer, and you're going to get stuck with people's psychology or with people's habits. And that's also something very important to realize. But essentially, so you want to cover your costs, but for that you need to know what your costs are, which brings us actually to the final point of the business model. What type of investments do you make? What type of buildings do you need? What type of machinery? What type of people? What type of marketing? What type of infrastructure? And all of this, of course, will come forward if you answer all of these previous questions, right? If you know what product and service, if you know what type of a sales channel, if you know what type of activities you're going to do, what type of partners and suppliers you're going to have, and if you know your income model, then automatically also with that it's going to be clear what type of costs you're going to make, and with that, of course, whether you're able to cover these costs through your income model. So that's the business model. How well you're able to answer these questions, how clear and how effectively determines how good your business model is going to be and how good your business model is going to pass the market test, and how eventually good your business is going to be able to compete with others out there. Doing your due diligence before starting your operations is key, because once you start going, it's very difficult to adapt your business model afterwards. It does happen, and over the course of time you do need to change your business model to stay recent and to stay contemporary, but a good start is going to make the difference, especially in the early years, because the moment you're founding your company, be sure that others will come on the market as well, and that's going to be a very tough test for you if you haven't really thought through your business model. So getting to the business plan, is slightly different in the sense that a business plan is a formal document. So this document contains, first of all, the goals that you have as a company. So what are you really going after? What do you try to fulfill? If you are a for-profit or a non-profit company, of course, this is going to be different, but it will also be different on the consumer needs that you've identified. It will be different based on, how quick you want to reach your goals, in what way, with what products, with what sales channels, and so on. So you start by spelling out your goals. What is it that you want to achieve as a company, and why, of course, and this needs to be convincing. Secondly, you need to explain how you will reach these goals. And then basically we're getting to the business model, because the business model actually tells us what consumer needs we want to achieve, in what way, with what income, with what costs, what suppliers, what partnerships, what sales channels, and so on, right? So the third point of the business plan is, you tell how much time all of this is going to cost you. So all of your costs that you need from, for example, others or from yourself, all of the resources you've put in there as costs, perhaps bank loans, perhaps investment money, all of these costs, in how much time do you plan to cover it? But on top of that, you need to, of course, go beyond just your costs. You need to think about all of these goals that I had in mind for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and how much time are you actually going to fulfill all of that? And so, if you think about it, of course, this is going to require financial tables, it's going to require, graphs and whatever. But if you think about it, the business plan is actually something that's not for yourself, because most of this you will already know, or you will do your homework before starting. You will do it in a sloppy way, you will do it in different ways, but you won't put it in a formal document. And the reason that there's a formal document is actually that this business plan is not for yourself, it's for investors. Investors are going to check whether your business model is okay, whether it lives up to the standards, whether it is solid, whether you are actually able to provide good products and good services with the right channels to the right consumers in the right ways. Yes or no? Investors are going to judge that, and oftentimes you're coming up with this formal document because you want advice, because you want money, because you want counseling, because you want legitimacy and reputation, because you want affiliation, whatever you're pursuing. The business plan oftentimes will help you with that, especially if there's an external need. And so you need to spell out your goals well and in a convincing way. Your business model needs to be solid, because it's going to help you explain how you're going to achieve what you're saying you're going to achieve. And finally, you need to tell how much time this is going to cost. And for this, of course, the income model compared to your costs is going to show the investors or any external type of a party the way in seeing whether your business model and eventually also your business plan is solid. So don't forget, the business model is for yourself, right? The business model actually for yourself is the market test. For yourself, it is basically a sign of whether your company is going to be competitive and whether with your company you're able to accrue competitive advantage and whether you're going to be successful. But the business plan is for someone else to get trust in you, for someone else to see that you're really going to make it, and for someone else to provide you whatever you're seeking from this someone else, being money, being counseling, being support, being affiliation, being whatever. So a business model should be good, but the business plan should be convincing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe buttons. I wish you all the best in the world and hope to see you again anytime soon. Take care.